welcome to Tell Muses, a storytelling podcast by storytellers, with storytellers, all about the wonderful art of storytelling and stories. And I see Despina's face, she's desperate because every time I forget what I have to say in the introduction, but that's fine. It's a storytelling podcast, and we interview storytellers from all over the world. So today, Despina and I are going to introduce you to a wonderful storyteller that we love. And before I do that, this season of Tell Muses is under the wing of Gawi, a wonderful storytelling festival in Matchwellock. But I won't tell you much about that. Usually Despina does that, but today somebody else will do that because she will surely speak about Gawi and the Get a Word in Edgeways festival. Because today with us we have the wonderful Cath Edwards. Hello, Cath, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Simona. Hello, Despina. Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, had been looking forward to this interview for so long, Cath.
Oh, well, that's such a nice thing to say. Thank you. Me
Very
too.
honest thing to say. We're very glad to have you here. So, I usually start asking our muses. You're our muse tonight. I start by asking our muse if they could share a few things about themselves. So, Cath, for people who know you and would like to learn more about you, or for people who don't, would you like to tell us a few things about who Cath Edwards is?
Wow, what a big question.
Yep.
Well, I've been a storyteller professionally for about 15 or 20 years, but I've always told stories. Somebody was asking me just a couple of days ago how I got into storytelling, and really, I think it was when I was first a teacher and I was working with youngsters with learning disabilities. And, some of them weren't able to follow a story from a book. And, I think reading stories is a great thing to do. But I don't need to tell you, telling stories is a different thing. And you can make it as accessible as you want to for your audience. And so that's when I really got interested in telling stories rather than reading them. And one day I was giving a talk for an early years society in Birmingham. I was giving a talk on early years storytelling, actually. And somebody asked me, did I know there was a storytelling cafe for adults in King's Heath, which is also a part of Birmingham. And I didn't, and I went along, and that got me hooked on storytelling for adults. And I've never looked back. But you asked me about myself. As well as being a storyteller, I'm a writer, and I'm currently chair of Walsall Writers' Circle. Walsall is the town where I live. And I've written several books. Two of them are books of folk tales for the History Press. One is West Midlands folk tales, and the other one is Warwickshire folk tales. And that was a great experience working on those books. But the writing and the storytelling tend to overlap, and sometimes it's hard to tell where one ends and the other one begins. I'm currently leading our writers' circle on a project. It's called Stories of Medieval Walsall. We are trying to recreate an idea of what Walsall was like in medieval times, because it was quite an important town, but most of medieval Walsall, nearly all of medieval Walsall has been bulldozed. It's gone. The only thing that's left is there's a church on the hill, and the crypt of that church is the only medieval building left. So we're trying to recreate it with our stories. And that's a little bit about me. I could go on rambling, but I think I've been talking for quite a while at this point.
That's wonderful. And Cath, since you mentioned the books that you wrote about folk tales, I've got a question. How do you go about finding the stories to put in those books and researching the stories and deciding which stories, for example, are going to go in a book like that?
Well, when it comes to West Midlands folk tales, that's a really good question to ask because you might know the History Press in England. I think their intention was to have a book of folk tales for every county in England and Scotland, and quite a few of those in Wales and Ireland as well. They gave me the West Midlands, which is 100% overlapped by the old counties of Staffordshire, Worcestershire, and Warwickshire. And the folk tales for Staffordshire and Worcestershire had already been written. I should say the West Midlands county has only been in existence since 1974. And folk tales tend to be a bit older than 1974. So there were sort of 2/3 of the county was gone because those books had already been written. So I had to look a bit further. Normally you'd look online, you'd look at people have written books of folk tales, especially from Victorian times, and you can look in there and find some local tales. But I had to look a lot further, and I was doing things like going through newspaper archives to find references to folklore and folk tales. And I managed to source a few old out of print books. There's one that I had quite a few stories from. I think it's just called Black Country Stories because there's quite a large part of the West Midlands that's referred to as the Black Country because there was a lot of coal mining. And a lot of the coal, it wasn't necessarily deep under the ground, it was surface mining. And you apparently you could hang your washing out and bring it in dirtier than when it went out because of all the dust and the grime from this surface mining of coal. So that's why it's called the Black Country, and the Black Country is known for having a particular type of story, and it was great fun sourcing some of those. So yeah, it was interesting challenge to find the stories for West Midlands folk tales.
Must have been very interesting to say the least.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I recently found out there's a difference between writer and author. So I'm a writer, Cath, you're an author because you have been published.
I
Very cool.
have. Yes, I've been published several times with a strange range of books, actually. Another one of my books is one I co-authored. It's called Communicate with Me, and it's a handbook for staff who are working with youngsters with severe and profound learning disabilities. And another one that was published by Reading Museum was based on a day's workshop I did for looked after children and their carers. And we did all sorts of exercises so that the children could write fragments of stories and outlines of stories and ideas for what they wanted in stories. And then I suppose I acted as ghostwriter. I wrote up the stories that the children had started, and the Reading Museum published the book. And as far as I know, it's still in their shop. But it was just great working with these children who've really had some difficult experiences in their lives, and just having a day of fun and just being creative, and then being able to do something with the kids' work that ended in a publication. So I suppose I am an author, Despina, in various ways.
You most definitely are, Cath. And we've seen this so many times, Simona, in this podcast. We've talked with people who have done work with kids with special needs, kids with learning difficulties, adults who are battling with addiction. so many different kinds of dire circumstances where a storyteller comes in so very handy, because we are empaths like that. Obviously, you need a
Yes.
storyteller in this kind of jobs, because it's not a job for a storyteller; it's something deeper.
Yes, I think that's very well put, Despina. Yeah, I entirely agree with that. If storytelling is something that you can't not do, then you probably shouldn't be doing it, in my humble opinion. It's yeah, it does come from something very deep, and it can be light-hearted. It's often a lot of fun, but at the same time, it feels very important.
I
It's a
think
very
if I hadn't found stories when I did in my life, I would have definitely gone through depression on different occasions.
oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's a very powerful instrument
yes,
for self-healing as well as community healing, not just
yes.
entertaining. So
Mm.
back to your books, Cath.
Mm.
I have several questions, so I'm going to try to prioritize them because they are all jumping
Mm.
out of my head right now. So one thing is the ones you did find in a book, in an older version, an older published book. Did you
Mm.
keep the same wording or did you edit them?
No, I didn't keep the same wording at all. I read the stories through a few times. Well, I'm not saying probably, I'm sure you do find this as a storyteller. When you come upon a book of stories, it might be a 300-page book, and you might find that 2 or 3 of those stories are ones that you want to tell. And you can't necessarily put your finger on it, what it is about those stories that really say something to you. And you know that there are some stories that you definitely don't want to tell, and other people may do. Um, so these stories, of course, they were written down, they were in a book. And I found the ones that said something to me, and I read them a few times, and then I put the book away and I just let them simmer. And, I think probably storytellers are the laziest people on the planet, because we find stories, we come across them, whether on the internet or in books or all kinds of ways we find stories, and we absorb the story and then we just leave it alone, and our unconscious mind does things with it when we're asleep and when we're watching the television and when we're doing the washing up. And all of a sudden, the story seems to pop out almost fully formed. So that's what happened. So no, I would never use somebody else's words that they've written in a book or that they've done anything with. I just find it so satisfying when my version of the story emerges. And I'm oversimplifying it. You know that, of course. As storytellers, we have all sorts of techniques and all kinds of ways of working on stories. Um, but
I
yeah,
think that
you read the story. Yeah.
sometimes the research we do, sometimes the research we do until we come up with a new version of an old story is so hard work. It can be, I don't know, it can be um, um, looking for what now? Um, Compared and contrasted to a work of a scientist, I don't know, or some academic field. It's
Mm-hmm.
very, very similar. Well, we skip the references if they go way too back, too way back, I guess. Um, but okay, that was one question I wanted to ask you. And what you call lazy, Cath, I call the creative process. Okay, it's a matter of perspective.
Yeah, that I don't know why I said lazy. I did actually mean the creative process, which is very,
Exactly.
very difficult
And clever.
and clever. Yes.
So my second question concerning the books is you find in a book, as you said, you find out of 300 stories, maybe a 10% out of them would be a good result. However, if you go through many books and you get two or three stories, if you're lucky and you get two or three stories out of each, you come up with a handful of stories. So how do you pick then?
Well, if you're like me, you're not terribly good with deadlines. And so it's all coming out now. I'm just all these admissions. Um, not terribly good with deadlines. And, I can just very happily extend that exploratory period where I'm reading and researching. And, of course, another thing you do is that you might look into the geography that lies behind the story and see how that might affect the story, especially when you're writing, a book of folk tales that's about a particular location. But then the deadline looms. And so it's self-selecting. The stories that I've got ready at the deadline are the ones that go in. And it's as scientific as that. I mean, it's a bit better than that because with my books of folk tales, there are chapter headings like witches or ghosts or noodlehead stories, and I make sure I've got, a reasonable number in each chapter. But yeah, there's a certain amount of self-selection. Those that are ready, when I need to send it off, are the ones that go in. Because you can go on forever with research, can't you? And it's just so exciting finding stories that you didn't previously know. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Once
Coming
you
across a
enter the
story.
rabbit hole, that's it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And don't you find that one rabbit hole leads to another rabbit hole, which leads
Absolutely,
to
of course.
another?
It's a whole system, an
Yeah.
underground system. Everything is connected.
Yes, yes.
And I love the fact that you told us, of course, that when you read a book, there are some stories that um, you just want to tell, and
Mm,
they reason for you, and you feel that those stories are your stories, and
mm,
even if you don't know why those are your stories, and in years of storytelling now, whenever I listen to a story, there could be somebody telling a story in a fantastic way. I love the story, but I would never tell that story myself. I love the story.
yeah.
It's not my story, and I don't know why. It's like a feeling that I have, and same thing happens with stories that I read in a book. And I was thinking, Kath, what kind of stories are your kinds of stories? Have you found a particular thread that connects them? Do you like telling ghost stories, funny stories, stories from the land? What are your stories?
That's a really good question. Yes, I do like ghost stories. Um, it can be difficult to source ghost stories because many of the stories that people call ghost stories and that find their way into books of ghost stories are actually not stories, but they're ghost sightings. It'll be, she went into the room and she saw a white lady and the white lady disappeared through the wall. And that's it. There's no narrative there at all. And that can be 90% of the contents of books of ghost stories. So again, if when I find one that's relevant uh, to the program I'm putting together, and it actually has a narrative, and I like it, and I feel I can tell it, that really is the holy grail of ghost stories. Um, but in general, I mean, you asked me, do I like funny stories? Yes, I do. I mentioned the Black Country earlier, and humour is very, very typical of Black Country stories. And humor in adversity as well, and people finding witty ways out of their problems, which leads me on to the main categories of stories that I like and the ones that don't particularly appeal to me. I'm not particularly drawn to wonder tales, and I know you will know what I mean by that, is stories that have a supernatural or magical element. For example, someone is going to go on some sort of an adventure and they are given a magic ring before they go. And on their adventure, they get into trouble. And guess what? The exact thing that the magic ring can do is what they need to get themselves out of trouble. And with that sort of story, I think, so what? Okay, they found they've got a magical way of getting out of trouble. What's interesting about that? That does not appeal to me. The stories I like are folk tales that are about people, and usually it's working people, almost always it's working people who find a way through, find a way to succeed by their wit, by their cleverness, not necessarily with clashing directly with the people who consider themselves above them, you know, the powerful people, the rich people. They don't necessarily have a head-on clash, but they find a witty and clever way of getting the better of those people or of getting the better of difficult situations. And that, to me, I find a lot more, that speaks to me a lot more, because I think it tells us something. And I love that message that you don't necessarily have to fight all the time. You can try to find creative ways out of your problems that don't involve having a magic ring.
Mm. I like both, to be honest. I also
Mm.
like magical fairy tales, but not as simple as that. It's like
Yeah.
somebody started writing a story and then they hit a wall and they couldn't find a way out of the situation, so they had to use some magical helper or some magical element or whatever, just to get the hero going, to get the plot
Mm.
going. That's fine with me. But I do like witty stories as well. And speaking of, perhaps it might be time for us to have a little story, Cath. What do you think?
Let's have a little story.
Yay.
This one is from my book, Warwickshire Folk Tales. And it's a noodlehead story, which, as you know, is a story about fools, because people are quite fond of telling you how foolish other people are. And there's a whole lot of stories in Warwickshire that are called Ilmington noodlehead stories, not because the fools are living in Ilmington, but apparently these were stories that were invented by the people of Ilmington about a place called Yebberton, or Ebrington actually, but Yebberton in slang, because, do you know what? Yebberton was across the border in Gloucestershire. And everybody in Warwickshire knows that people in Gloucestershire just aren't too clever. And I was going to say there was a church in Yebberton. It's still there. It's a lovely ancient stone church with a square tower. But this story takes place a long time ago. And the church was a little bit newer. And there was a tramp walking along his way into the village past the wall that was between him and the church graveyard. And the tramp just had this small bundle on his back. It was really little more than a rolled up blanket tied with string so that he could perhaps try to keep warm when he slept under a hedge at night. I saw there was something going on by the church, and he'd leaned on the church wall so that he could watch and see what these people were doing. And there was a large red-faced, I was going to say important looking, perhaps that's not quite true. There was something about him that told you that he thought he was important. And he was holding forth to a group of other men. And he was explaining to them that the church was meant to be on the highest ground so that people in the surrounding area could look up to the church. And he pointed out that over there, a little bit to the left, that ground looked higher than the ground the church was standing on. It wasn't far away, it was only about 10 yards or so, but clearly the church had been built in the wrong place. And so what he was telling these other men to do was, I mean, it's the obvious thing to do, isn't it? You have to move the church because it has to be on the highest ground. And they all trooped around to the other side of the church so that they could push it onto the higher ground. Then the tramp saw them coming back again round to this side of the church because somebody had realised, how were they to know? How would they know how far it had moved? And they'd had the bright idea, if they all took their jackets off and put their jackets down in a line, perhaps 2 or 3 feet away from the wall of the church, then when they'd pushed the church, they could come round again and they could see that it was closer to their jackets. Well, of course, that is the obvious thing to do. And that's what they did. They all took their jackets off. They folded them up carefully. They put them down, placed them in a line, equidistant from the wall of the church. And then they disappeared again around the other side of the church. And if we follow them to the far side of the church, we will see that the very important looking man is instructing them that they are to place their hands on the wall of the church, and they are, on his command, to push. And they did. It was 1, 2, 3, push. And they did. And they were red in the face, and they were gasping for breath. And they were getting warmer and warmer and more out of breath. And the important man was telling them to push and push and push. And in the end, one of the men said, "Can't we just see how far we've pushed it?" And so they were allowed a break and they were allowed to troop around the church again. And it was a miracle. They were amazed at how well they had done. They had moved the church so far. Not only had the church moved next to the line of jackets, they had moved it so that it was covering all their jackets. Their jackets could no longer be seen. Well, they thought they'd done enough. They were pleased with themselves. And they'd lost their jackets, but at least they knew their jackets were embedded in a holy place. And if we follow the tramp, we see that he's walking out of the other side of the village. And that bundle on his back is now a lot more bulky than it was when he started. And that's the story of Yeberton Church.
Oh, that's nice.
It's lovely, isn't
It
it?
was very funny. My cheeks are on fire.
You must have been pushing a church.
Plus, it's a win-win, right? Nobody lost anything.
They were all happy.
Yeah.
They were certainly happy.
And some of them were warmer at night.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, well, they didn't need their jackets, did they? They'd warmed themselves up.
Obviously.
Mm.
Wow, great. I love stories about fools and yes, one more to add to my list of stories about fools.
Good.
Wonderful story. And Cath, at the beginning, I during the introduction, I said that the podcast is under the wing of Get a Word in Edgeways, and
Yes.
that we would talk about that with you. So I was wondering, would you like to tell us about your connection to the festival, your time on the festival, and in particular, maybe this is my curiosity taking over here, but I wasn't at the festival last year, and I saw in the program that you were leading a walk in a graveyard. Is that what you were
Um,
doing? No,
no, I wasn't. That was a couple of years ago.
2 years
And
Years
we,
ago. Oh, all right.
yeah, yeah, we
Makes sense.
had, well, do you know, time flies. It might be even longer than that. But yeah, there's a lovely church right in the middle of Much Wenlock, which is where Get a Word in Edgeways takes place. And if anybody has not been to Much Wenlock, you really must go. It's only small, but it's such a lovely little town. It's beautiful and, surrounded by the beautiful Shropshire hillside. Not too far from Wenlock Edge, and there's a number of folk tales about Wenlock Edge as well. It's quite a remarkable geographical feature, and it's great for walks. So I can really recommend the area. And yes, so there's a beautiful old church, and it's got a lovely graveyard. That's a funny thing to say about a graveyard, isn't it?
No,
But
it's not.
you know what
It's
I
not.
mean.
It's
It's
lovely.
actually it is a very well kept graveyard, and there are some beautiful mature trees there. And yeah, several of us told some ghost stories, and we tried to link them to the place where we were. So I told a story that was about a crypt, and I told it just outside. I don't know if it was actually a door into a crypt, but it had some stone steps and it looked like it could well be. So that was fine. And then I told another one about a disreputable old lady making her way home after drinking at the inn with her friends. And her son and daughter in law were really disapproving of her getting up to these very unladylike things. She'd drink and then she'd start singing, and then with a few more drinks, she'd get up on the table and she'd dance, and she'd pull up her skirt so you could see her petticoat, and then she'd pull up her petticoat so that you could see her shift. Tell you what, though, you couldn't see her knickers because she wasn't wearing any. So this So the son and daughter-in-law tried to frighten her. The son dressed up as a ghost and tried to frighten her. But in the end, the joke is on him. I don't suppose there's time for me to tell that story now. But so that was a story I told by the churchyard wall, which is in itself, I'm sure it's got stories to tell, really ancient stone wall. So yes, we had a wonderful time telling stories, and yeah, I'm not involved with the festival anymore, but I think Despin has been involved more recently than I have, in fact.
Yeah, but it's been nice having someone else tell people how beautiful Much Wenlock is other than me. Thank you, Cath.
Yes. Yes, isn't it just? Yeah.
And the festival, of course, yeah, it's gorgeous. I
Mm.
hope I'll make it again this year, this October.
Mm.
But this is not the only thing you do, my love. You do so much. I mean, you're at the East Anglian every year, and you
Mm.
host, together with Marion Lipa, the Epic Weekenders every September, is it? Well,
Yes,
tell
it's
us about the
usually
things you do.
it's round about the third weekend in September, the Epic Weekend, where we take an epic and we divide it into 28 sections and 28 storytellers over a weekend. We tell a whole epic. So that's from Friday night to Sunday afternoon. This year we're doing Canterbury Tales. Previously, we've done Tales of Robin Hood, we've done Arthurian Tales. Last year, we did the Chinese epic Monkey, quite a long time ago. We did the Odyssey and the Iliad. We've done the Shahnameh. Yeah, It's just a fabulous weekend, isn't it, Despina? You've been a couple of times.
I've only been once, unfortunately.
Is it one? Only once? Why
Only
did I think you'd been
once.
more than that?
I've
Oh, you
been
came to
once
the
in
Robin
Japan.
Hood one, didn't you? You
Yeah,
came to the
I
Tales of the
missed
Greenwood.
I missed the monkey.
Mm,
I wanted to be there, the monkey, so much.
yeah.
Well, just for people who don't know what this is not a festival. This is not a commission. This is a weekend where storytellers get together and do their storytelling stuff just for fun. And we
Mm.
pay a considerable amount. Well, no, we pay a small amount of money considering how much you feed us there. Yeah, we should
Mm.
have that too. And the place is gorgeous. We should tell them
It's
about this.
it is beautiful. We have it at Buckden Towers, which is owned by the Claretian Mission, and there are still some of the Claretians still there. What we do takes place in a Victorian house, a large Victorian house, and but just across the way, there's the Bishop's Palace, which is, I think, 15th century. Catherine of Aragon is known to have stayed there. So it's really, really historic place, and it's very beautiful and peaceful. There are large grounds with mature trees. There's an orchard. It's just a lovely place to be. Um, and yeah, that's right, Despina. We get together just for the fun of it, and I've got to hear so many epics that I wouldn't have done
Mm,
otherwise.
yeah.
And it's just great to hear that, because every single one of the 28 storytellers has got a different style and a different approach. And it's just such a varied weekend. Um, yeah, a lot of fun as well. And of
It
course,
is very nerdy, but
yeah,
also people who don't tell stories go there because we need
yeah,
audience as well.
yes. We always have a few places for people who aren't telling. Generally, there's about 4 people there who aren't telling. It's not very many because we just don't have that much spare room. But it's a lovely way to spend a weekend. And of course, there is the Saturday night quiz, which is not to be missed.
Yes, well, I've seen you do so much throughout the years, and one thing that stuck in my mind, because I wanted to be there, and I've never got to ask you, is I saw you organize an evening about Agatha Christie, and you were what were you, Miss Marple, and solving the
Not,
cases?
not, not exactly. The storyteller Jason Buck and I got together and we devised an interactive murder mystery. So there's a little bit of scripting there, but not too much. So it's mostly a bit of acting, a bit of storytelling. I am Miss Christie Marwell,
Mm.
which is kind of a nod to Miss Marple. And also, of course, I've pinched Agatha Christie's name. And Jason is Inspector Gruff. And we assemble the audience so that they can help us to solve the crime. It's called Death at the Vicarage. We're doing it again in one of the Warwickshire libraries in November. And then in January and February, I'll be running a couple of writing workshops again for Warwickshire libraries on how to write cozy crime. And for anybody who doesn't know, cozy crime is the kind of thing that Agatha Christie used to write. And it's becoming really popular at the moment. Um, it's a more of a mystery than a crime. It's not nasty. There might be a murder. That might be the crime that's committed, but you don't see any violence or nastiness. It's really about the puzzle. It's about the author putting in clues so the reader has a chance of solving the mystery before the author does the big reveal at the end. So I'll be teaching people how to write those
You know,
early. Yeah.
do an online version, right? Preferably at weekends.
I haven't planned to do an online version, but I probably could.
You definitely could, Cath, and you'd have two people come into your workshop just here.
Let's
I
just say
love
Fabulous.
cozy crimes. I love
Yeah.
Agatha Christie, but I've
Yes.
never been able to solve a crime. I must have read something like 50 books by Agatha
Mm.
Christie by now, and
Mm.
I'm reading one at the moment. So
Are
it
you? Which
must
one are
be
you
so.
reading now?
I'm reading One to Buckle Your Shoe, but
Buckle
One
My
to
Shoe. Yes. Yes.
Buckle My Shoe. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I'm currently reading Agatha Christie to prepare for these workshops, and I've just finished reading Hercule Poirot's Christmas. Before that, it was Appointment with Death, and I've just started Death on the Nile.
I've just finished the Appointment with Death, like on Friday, like the other day.
Okay.
So you've got a disciple all prepared for class, Cath.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, we're getting very nerdy here, aren't we?
yeah.
So
But
before we our audience, do you think we could have another story?
Yes, absolutely. This is one from West Midlands folk tales, and it's one of the Black Country stories that I told you about. And this is about a harassed mother who has a little boy, Tommy. He's about 9 years old, and he's not exactly a bad lad, but he's just one of these boys who always seems to be getting into mischief, always seems to be annoying the neighbours. If he kicks his football, it's bound to go through the neighbour's greenhouse. And if he's in the street, he's always going to be the one who's the noisiest. And this mother, she didn't just have Tommy, she had younger children as well. And he always seemed to be, just when she was busy, perhaps cooking in the kitchen, and he'd always manage to get into a squabble with his younger siblings. And of course, because he was 9, Tommy went to school. So during the week, his mother had a bit of a break from him. But the weekends did seem very long at times and very tedious. And she had a bright idea. What about Sunday school? She could take him to Sunday school every Sunday morning for a couple of hours, and then she could go home. She'd be able to get the Sunday dinner ready in peace without him getting under her feet and without neighbours knocking on the door and complaining about him. And so the next Sunday, he had to wash behind his ears and put his best shirt on, well, his school shirt, really. And she took him off to the church hall where there was a very earnest young woman who had her charges sitting on the floor, grouped around her. And Tommy's mother brought him in and she introduced him to the Sunday school teacher. Now, she was an honest woman. And so she felt duty bound to tell the teacher that Tommy could be a bit of a handful. And the teacher said, Madam, you need not worry, because I am here to teach the children about the love of God, but also the discipline of Christian life. You will find he is transformed. You will find after a few weeks he will be a different boy after my teaching. The mother was not convinced. What could she do but give it a try? And so she left Tommy at the Sunday school and she went back home with a feeling of some relief. Now, it just so happened that the teacher that Sunday was teaching the children about God being all seeing. And she said, Now, children, before Tommy came in, I was telling you that God sees everything. Tommy, sitting at the back, he put his hand up. He said, Miss, can God see me when I'm in our front room inside our house? And the teacher said, yes, he can. And you want to be careful, Tommy, because he can see everything that you do. And Tommy said, oh. And the teacher went on explaining to the children about God being all seeing. Miss, what about when I'm in the kitchen at the back of the house? Can he see me then? Well, the teacher saw her opportunity and she said, yes, he can see you. And I can tell you this, he can see you when you're being naughty and he can see you when you're being a nuisance to your mother. So just think about that, Tommy. Oh, he said. And she went on about God seeing everything and knowing everything. That Miss, what about down in our cellar under the house? Can he see me when I'm down there? Yes, he can, Tommy. And what's more, oh, you're a liar, because we haven't got one. And that is the story of Tommy and the Sunday school teacher. And I think Tommy, as I was saying about people living on their wits, I think Tommy will have no trouble when he grows up in living on his wits.
Well, poor teacher, she tried. Of
She
course,
did try.
I would
She
relate
did try.
to Simona, yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. I thought he would be changed or something like that.
Perhaps he was changed as well. Who knows? I'm not sure he went back to the Sunday school, though.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
darling, what it is you do nowadays? You said you are running the writing clubs, yeah? You're
Yes,
getting
right,
prepared for September to do the epic weekend. What else? What else?
right. You know, as a storyteller, I never go out looking for work. I find I just get a lovely, steady trickle of work. And I've very recently been working for Gloucestershire Libraries. I did two performances for them, one for adults, that was Shakespeare Tattle and Tales, which is just little interesting snippets and anecdotes about Shakespeare and his life and about Stratford.
The anniversary recently, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's why Gloucestershire Libraries wanted these performances. And I did The Tempest for children. That was just so much fun. You know, I had them all joining in, and I had the mums at the back waving a piece of blue cloth up and down to represent the storm at the sea. And it was just such fun. Um, so, yeah, I did that. And I've got a couple of bookings at community gardens to do some family storytelling. And I do quite a lot of local storytelling for people who the sort of clubs that older people go to. You know, we've got an organisation called Women's Institute, and that tends to be some older people. There's University of the Third Age, which is again for older people. I was telling recently at a club for people who are retired NHS workers. I didn't know there was such a club, but I do now. And they want me to come back at Christmas because, you know, Christmassy stories and wintry stories are some of my favourite stories to tell. So it's really varied and really interesting, and long may it continue. I seem to just keep getting bookings, and hey, I'm not complaining.
Nice, nice. So, how can people find you if they do want to book you?
Well, I've got a website which is just storytellingforall.com. storytellingforall.co.uk. Obviously, storytelling for all is all one word.
We might need to include that in the episode's description so you can find it more easily. Yeah.
And they can find me on Facebook as well. I've got my Cath Edwards Facebook page, and I've got my Cath Edwards storyteller and author Facebook page. So yeah, it's not too difficult to find me.
Excellent, excellent. I hope many, many people go looking for you now.
Thank you.
They all want to book you because your telling is mesmerizing, Cath. Whenever you tell a story, just listening. I don't know. In Italian, we've got this expression that I don't really know how to translate in English at the moment, but it's like you hang from somebody's lips, and it means that you're listening to every word that they're saying, and you can't just stop listening to them because you're so mesmerized, so entrenched by what's happening, that you can't stop listening. So, and that's
Oh,
what
thank
happens every
you.
time that you tell a story.
Thank you, Simona. That's really kind. That means a lot. Thank you.
Soothing voice helps. And she's one of the storytellers that on many occasions I've heard tell a story and then I wanted to go out and tell that story. Like when she was on about the Christmassy tales and the ghostly tales.
Mm,
One I particularly love, the one about the
yeah,
Iho. Yeah. The old
yeah,
his son,
yes.
a father and their son getting lost in a snowstorm, but I'm not going to tell anything else about it.
Yes,
And
don't give the ending away.
No,
I
I'm
think,
not giving the beginning even.
Yeah, yeah, that is one of my favorites. Well, one of my many favorites.
And it's
and
time
I think
it's taking place anywhere, any time, you know.
Mm.
So much. Even though I know it's an English tale, it could be anywhere really, anywhere with a cold winter.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, you've got all kinds of stories, all kinds of
Mm.
wonderful stories, darling. Honestly, yeah. Yeah, as you said, you read a book of 300 stories and you pick up two or three if you're lucky.
Yes, that's right.
Even that
Mm.
often for me, because I'm an auditory learner,
Mm.
so I more easily pick up stories if I hear them told by another teller than I will from a book.
All right, that's interesting.
It's different brains working in different ways.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. As a writer, I think I'm very obviously drawn to words on the page. I've always, even as a child, I read a lot. I always had my nose in a book. So words on a page as well as a spoken word, it means a lot. Yeah. Sorry, Simona, what were you saying?
no, I was just saying that I've got the same experience as Despina. Sometimes when I read a story on the page, it doesn't jump at me,
Mm,
but when I hear it, and not just when I listen to it told by a storyteller, um, it has a different feeling. But at the same time, it happened to me to listen to the same story told by different storytellers,
mhm.
and there are certain styles of storytelling and certain styles of people telling stories that just jump at me, and whenever I hear the same story told by two storytellers, and one is not my style, the other one is really my style of storytelling.
Mm.
Maybe the first time I say, okay, nice story. The second time is like, oh, I want to tell that story.
Mm.
So
It's
yes,
so hard to put your finger on it, isn't it? So hard to define what it is that makes that story compelling. With, maybe one teller works for you and another one doesn't.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, really hard to know what it is.
I have this kind of brain that creates images.
Mm-hmm.
Simon and I have both been bookworms since we were kids, much like you, Cath, with our nose in a book for years and years before we realized that the spoken storytelling is a whole different thing.
Mm.
So by having a person, a wordsmith, create images, they can see, and you can tell that they are seeing what they're describing. This helps me create my images. I think this is what works for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Despina. That yeah, I think you can always tell when a storyteller maybe isn't quite immersed in the story themselves, that they haven't got a clear, detailed picture of what's going on. Somehow it comes across. Even with the same words, somehow you can see whether they're seeing it or not. You can sense whether they're seeing it or not.
So food for thought for storytellers and techniques to work on. Lovely. So
Wonderful.
it's about time we wrap this up. Thank you so much for being here with us. We're really, really honestly, like, not blowing your trumpet now. We honestly enjoy the interview, and we love the work you do. And we
Thank you.
know lots of work and success on your way to the. On.
Thank you. And well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's just been an absolute delight to hang out with both of you for an hour and just, talk about the thing that we're all interested in. It's an easy thing to do, isn't it?